were
No,
there to ask for it,
I would
but
not put
I'm not
Ataturk at
denying
any.
the fact that it's a horrible thing or anything. I wish we wouldn't genocide their entire kind to such levels, but I mean, it also doesn't mean that they weren't the ones who've asked for it by terrorizing the East, but still.
So what you're saying, so by your logic, okay, everything that the United States that has done that is bad in the Middle East is justified because they asked for it.
No, they didn't ask for it, to be honest with you.
They did.
It- I mean, I'm
According to
not
my,
talking about terror. I'm talking about like, oh, you said Middle East, right? Pardon me. I thought you said Vietnam for a second.
well, Vietnam, that was an issue with alliances with France, and then France fucked us over. That's why I'm not a huge fan of France. No, Middle East, yeah. Oh, they caused some terror. They've actually been predating on the United States since the
Yeah, they
foundation.
were. I mean, the September 11 attacks.
I would even go further back and do the Barbary
Yeah,
War.
even before
But
that. I mean, it's horrible what the Middle East have done. I
well,
could never deny such a thing, and I would never want to.
but the way that because you are a Turk, and this is a national pride issue. I'm not going to lie, because when America does dumb and bad things that hurt other nations, I'm really upset, and usually I express my malcontent through voting. But remember that when you live in a country that has a pretty sick history, especially you are currently living in a country that has a really shitty dictator in charge,
Yeah.
they are probably not going to tell you the truth about what happened. This is one of the
Well,
reasons. And
I
here's
guess.
the entire world except for Turkey looks at what happened and says this was meaningless. This had no cause, and this was horrible. And the fact that Turkey continues to deny that it even happened
I
only.
mean, it doesn't mean that it had no. It had a cause, but still, it doesn't mean that we're right about it or anything. Sure, I agree with you on that one. I think that it shouldn't have happened to such a horrible extent. But I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that it's righteous for us to have annihilated them, but I'm saying that it's not like they're like perfect or anything. It's not like they're all
Okay,
completely innocent or anything. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'll tell you this: no human group is without some kind of flaw. There's no such thing. Even the Buddhists can
But
act
we're
like,
talking about terrorism.
well, like I said, I'm not done yet. Any group of humans will inevitably have a group of people more than happy of causing problems because of one reason or another. There's no such thing. However, when one particularly powerful group, decides to basically carve out a chunk of itself and then attempt to systematically exterminate it, we can say that that's not only bad, but it's wrong on every level. And there's a reason why we point the finger at Russia and Germany and Yugoslavia when they attempted, sorry, Serbia, to when they attempted to genocide people. It happens, but it's also important that we sit here and go, let's not do that again. But the first thing you have to do is accept that
If
it
I
happened.
could just be rude and interrupt, sorry, I do apologize, but Mr. Batman has just got back to me and he is going to come in.
Am I supposed to slice I am
I think we
Sid?
could talk about
That's
that
what
at a
I'm
later
supposed to
date.
do. Boss, am I supposed to slice him, ignore him? What the fuck do I do?
Okay,
No,
so this is how
You
it
can
works.
talk
he's a
to
good
him
point.
as long as
Of
people take it in turns. That's fine. Who was it that said they wanted? Here's Mr. Batman. Welcome, Mr. Batman. Who said that they wanted to ask a question
I wanted
first to
to be
Mr.
the
Batman?
first.
All right, you,
Okay,
you go
hold
ahead
on.
then, Punk. Okay,
Just a moment.
let Punk go because he wants to.
No.
Oh,
I just want to set the ground rules. I just want to set up the ground rules for what's going on. Is Mr. Batman muted by a mod?
no.
No, he just doesn't talk all the time. He's a quiet man. He talks when he has
I
to.
got him muted myself. That's because but okay. Here are the ground rules for the conversation. Don't be rude. Let people talk. Do not reduce someone's volume down to 0 and do not mute the mods. You may continue.
So, Mr. Batman, I wanted to ask you this for a few days actually. So, what do you think about the fact that, the Bible says that the universe has to have a creator, which is the God, you know, the guy that loves everyone. So, what if, I mean, I mean, who created God? Have you ever thought of that? I mean, why the universe itself can't exist without a creator, but God can exist without a creator and can be omnipresent, but the universe can't be omnipresent without a God.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Ah, now I got it working. Okay, hang on a second, boys and girls. I'll be right there.
Yeah, you take your time, man. It's fine.
All right, boys and girls.
Hey, Mr. Batman. So,
Yes,
I
sir.
wanted to ask you this for a few days. I don't know if you've heard me the first time that I've asked you.
No, having
Because
some audio issues. I apologize.
sure, no, it's nothing. It's not a big deal. So, I wanted to ask you something, but I would appreciate it if you could answer it off of scientific, if you could justify it off of scientific means and manners instead of just looking at what the Bible says, because even your merchandise says that you're all about science. So is that fine with you?
Absolutely, sir.
Sure, awesome. So I wanted to ask you why. Why can God be omnipresent and have no creator, but the universe itself can only be omnipresent when it has to have a creator, the which is your Lord, right? So I wanted to ask you this: why does God not have a creator, but the universe does? I mean, why is it not like the universe doesn't exist on its own?
Well,
I
sir,
mean,
that's actually a good question.
yeah, wouldn't
Sorry.
that make the existence of all religion obsolete if that was the case? If universe itself was if the only thing that's omnipresent, like
Actually, sir, the universe is not omnipresent. As a matter of fact, the universe exists, but parts of the universe do not exist at other parts of the universe. Would you agree, sir, that our Earth does not exist simultaneously at the same point as the planet Pluto or the
I think I
planetoid Pluto?
use that word when it comes to the universe. I've meant like it's infinite. It doesn't.
It's not
I mean,
infinite either, sir.
yeah, there's the microwave radiation thing where the universe is still expanding and stuff. You know, I'm asking you why is God why
Yes, sir.
God
I
doesn't have a
understand the
creator?
question. I understand your question, sir, but you have to understand that your premises are faulty. Now, well, you have to deal with certain things that are in the physical world that cannot be explained by the physical world. You see, the physical world itself had a beginning. We know this due to the laws of thermodynamics. everything is decaying, everything is dying, everything is going from a state of order to disorder, from workable usable energy to no workable usable energy, to workable usable information, that's our genetics, to no workable usable information, that's genetic catastrophe. That means we're coming to a point where we will no longer be functional as a species. So, sir, that means that something wound everything up into the least amount of entropy possible and then turned it loose so it could decay over time. Do you agree, sir, that the second law of thermodynamics tells us that everything goes from order to disorder?
Yes, so is that how you justify that the universe has to have a creator?
And that's just one, sir. The fact of the matter is, anything that has a beginning is known as an effect. Every effect must have an adequate cause. Are you aware of this law?
Yes.
Excellent. So, since time, space, and matter had a beginning, we must look at time, space, and matter. That's the evidence. That's the bit of information, the data that we are observing. And now we must explain it because science wants to know how things work, why they work the way they do, and what they are contingent upon. Now, sir, would you agree that whatever caused time to begin to exist, whatever thing or being it might have been, that thing or being did not need time in order to create time?
Hmm. Well, I don't think this thing. I mean, your premise has ever been explained by science. I mean,
I'm sorry, sir. I asked you a question and I would really appreciate an answer.
I don't know honestly.
Okay, sir. Well, that's where I can help because I do know.
Sure.
You see, time, space, and matter had a beginning. Time itself had a beginning. This is called an effect. This is one of those pesky little laws that never change over time. So, since time had a beginning, whatever caused time to begin, by definition, must be outside of temporal time and exist in the eternal realm. You see, there's two types of time. Most people don't know this. There's temporal time, time that has a beginning and will have an end. We know it will have an end. That's called heat death. And there's eternal time. This is the eternal realm in which the God of creation lives. Now, sir, since everything decays over time, that means it had a beginning. Whatever caused time to begin, by definition, must be timeless or outside of time. Now, let's look at all the information that we have right in front of us, which would be time, space, and matter. Whatever caused time, space, and matter to begin, by definition, must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, all powerful, all knowing, a loving, living, logical, lawgiver God that does not change over time. And, sir, if you like, and if you have the time, I can prove each and every one of those positions.
Sure. So what you're saying is that God exists outside of time and space, and therefore he doesn't need to have something that have caused God to exist because he always have existed outside of time and space. Is that what you're trying to
Yes,
imply?
sir. Would you
Okay.
agree that laws of logic have always existed?
Logic by means of scientific. I mean, by means
Sir,
of the laws
there's
of.
only logic. Hang on a second. There's only logic, sir. And when I'm talking about the base laws of logic, the fundamental
Yeah, they have existed.
laws of logic, which are basic needs for intelligibility and reasoning. Without these laws of logic, you don't know things. So these would be the laws of identity, the laws of non contradiction, and the law of the excluded middle. Would you agree, sir, that these laws have always existed? They had no beginning and they will have no end.
Yes,
Great. Where do they come from and why do they not change over time?
because which law was it that said that everything has to have a cause?
That would be the first law of thermodynamics. Or excuse me,
Yeah.
that would be the law of cause and effect. Every effect must have a cause.
Yes.
Again, sir, we
So
see
I'm
we
saying
see.
it's
Hang on
because
a
of.
second. Hang on just a second, sir. Hang on just a second. We see these effects in our physical world. We see the beginning of these effects in our physical world. We use these laws in our physical world to identify. You're using the law of identity right now to identify my voice, to identify the words that are coming out of my mouth, to identify the definitions that are coming into your ears. You're using this law of identity. This law of identity is not physical, but it exists in the physical world. It does not change, because if it ever did change, we couldn't know anything to be true. So here's 3 cause and effect questions for you. What causes the laws of logic to exist? What causes them not to change over time? And what causes them to be here again tomorrow so we can have this party one more time?
The first law of thermodynamics, right?
I'm sorry, sir. The
Uh,
first law of thermodynamics only deals with matter and energy. Matter and energy will never give you any natural law at any time. As a matter of fact, matter and energy cannot give you a metaphysical law. A metaphysical law must come from outside of the physical world. That's why it's called metaphysical. Metaphysical means outside of the physical realm. So, since we know that all time, space, and matter decays over time,
yes.
anything that's constantly changing over time cannot be the cause of a law that never changes over time. Do you see that?
Yes. So was it the third law of thermodynamics, or am I still wrong? Because I forgot which that was.
Well, sure, there are all other laws of thermodynamics, but I very rarely get to those. The first and the second law always destroys any position that goes against the word of
Hmm. I think, I mean, you've answered it in a pretty good way. I mean, I'm glad you. I mean, I'm glad that you took your time to explain it to me. So thanks. That's all I wanted to ask.
Quite welcome, sir. And again, I did so, and I did not open my Bible. I want you to realize, sir, that the physical world declares the handiwork of the Creator. That is Scripture. And as a matter of fact, if you want to know that for certainty, you can actually look at Genesis 1:1, where it says, "In the beginning," that's time, "God, the agent behind the creation, created the heavens," that's space, "and the earth," that's matter. All time, space, and matter created in the very first verse of Genesis. But it gets even better than that. If you look at Genesis verse 1, chapter 1, verse 2, it says, "And the Spirit of the Lord was hovering over the surface of the deep." Well, that's all sounds all lovely and poetic, but what the heck's that mean? If you look at that word hovering there and you look at it in the original Hebrew, I don't remember the word itself. I'm a little tired today, but the word there is translated into brooding. Brooding is an agrarian or farming term. It's what hens do to their eggs when they lay them. They lay the egg and then they warm it and spin it. They warm it and spin it. Uh-oh. Guess what? This is scientific. In Genesis 1:1, God created all time, space, and matter. In Genesis 1:2, God gave matter spin, all matter spin.
Whoa.
Every molecule, every atom, every moon, every planet, every galaxy has spin to it. So in Genesis 1, God creates all time, space, and matter. In Genesis 1:2, he gives it all spin. That's science there again, sir. But I'm going to go even a little further.
Whoa.
I'm actually going to stay. I'm going to say, hang on a second. I'm going to stay in the book of Genesis, and I'm going to point to you the gospel of the kingdom in Genesis chapter 5, I believe it is, when we get the genealogies. And it starts off with Adam. And it says, "These are the genealogies." It starts off with Adam and Seth and Enosh. Well, did you know that every single one of those Hebrew names means something? Adam means man. Seth means appointed. Enosh means mortal sorrows. You get down to this cool name called Methuselah. Methuselah was the oldest man that recorded to live. 969 years this man lived. His name literally means "his death will bring." I want you to think about this. His name alone is a prophecy. When he died, everybody knew for generations, when this particular kid died, that the judgment of God was coming on the planet. So every time this kid got a cold, I imagine everybody in the neighborhood got nervous But I digress. So you got Methuselah, his death will bring, and Noah means comfort or rest. So let's look at Genesis chapter 5 and the genealogies. Remember, Adam means man. And so when you read these names, not the transliterations, not Adam, not Adam, Seth, Enosh, and all the way down, but you read what they mean, not their transliterations, how they sound. What you get is Adam means man. Man is appointed mortal sorrows, but the living God shall come down teaching. His death will bring. Whose death? God's death will bring the despairing comfort and rest. This is the message of the gospel of the kingdom in Genesis chapter 5. This is what Messiah came to do. Now, sir, I'll talk science all day long, but you cannot do science without the God of the Bible.
Okay, Mr. Batman, thank you very
Well,
much for your reply there. That was quite a lengthy response, and I hope that you appreciate.
I wanted to comment on the egg spinning thing. I mean, so
Well,
they
okay,
use
you can if you want, but after this, we're gonna move on to other questions from Mr. Batman.
sure. Well, I wanted to ask you. So the Bible uses terms that are used to depict things like spinning eggs, giving them warmth. Is a way of God delivering his scientific message, like what exactly happens in terms of what he's doing to the people to the people of that time in a meaningful manner that they can understand and follow
No,
by.
sir. They didn't understand that.
They
That's for
didn't.
our benefit. No, sir. They didn't understand that atoms had spin. Do you think they could see atoms back then there, sir?
No, I
Do
meant
you
like
think they could see that do you think they could see protons and neutrons? Do you think they saw that
no,
they had spin
obviously
to them,
not.
sir? Great. No, this is for our benefit. What I'm talking about,
Our
again,
generation.
for your benefit and for their benefit, was the names of the genealogies. You know what? Nobody can convince me that an ancient Hebrew Pharisee who didn't believe in a dying and rising Messiah is going to put the message of a dying and rising Messiah in the very first book of the Bible.
Hmm.
You see, Jews are going to say, well, there's no Messiah mentioned in the scripture. Guess what? I just pointed out he's in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 5 in the genealogies. Everything points to Messiah.
Okay,
Hmm.
at this point, let's just move on because I don't want Batman to
Sure.
get too bored. Dread, did you wanna you had a question for Mr. Batman, I think, didn't you?
A couple. I'll try to formulate them in a decent way. Give me a moment. If anyone else has anything to say, go.
Okay, so while we're waiting for Dread, anybody else for Mr. Batman?
All right, I'm ready. I think I have it reasonably well.
Oh, that was quick.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So you said that you cannot perform science without effectively God or the Bible.
Correct.
Then why is it that I have been performing science now for about 10 years and I am an atheist?
Sir, I didn't say you couldn't actually perform science. What I'm saying is you can't justify your ability to perform science. Would you agree, sir, that in order for you to do any scientific method whatsoever, that science requires, hello, Miss Patty, that science requires something called cause and effect relationships?
That is a precept in physics, yes.
No, sir, it's not a presuppositional of physics. It's an absolute necessity.
Right.
In
It's
order
one of
for
the
you
laws.
to, I'm sorry, sir, hang on a second. I waited for you, sir. Please wait for me. Again, sir, in order for you to do an experiment, would you agree, sir, that you are observing something that has an effect on what it is you are experimenting on? You cause a situation and you observe the effect and you gather the data. Would you agree that's how science works?
Uh, that's actually not what science is. Science is a process where you're describing as an experiment.
Yes, sir. But is that not the scientific method? Experimentation, what we call operational operational science.
Observation of things happening due to cause and effect is part of science. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, in order to do science, any science whatsoever, not only do you need the law of cause and effect, but you need many other things as well, sir. You also need the laws of logic. You need laws of physics. You need laws of, if you're talking about biology, you need laws of chemistry. You need laws of biology. You need all kinds of things that you are simply just presupposing without any justification. Now, sir, I don't know what field of science you happen to be in, but would you agree, sir? Would you agree in order to do that particular field of science, you would necessity would require that you would have to be able to identify the thing it is you are experimenting on and compare and contrast it to what happened in your results or your effect?
Well, I think there's actually a flaw in one of the statements you made because you stated that the basics understandings of science are made without any kind of justification, but that's not true. They are made with justification.
I'm sorry, sir. I believe I asked you a laser beam focused question. Mr. Punk, would
I'm
you go
aware,
ahead
but
on the push to talk,
that doesn't
please?
mean I can't.
Hold on.
Hang on a second.
him.
Sir, gentlemen, please, one at a time. I asked Mr. Punk, please go to push to talk. We're picking up your background noise. Sir, and I'm asking you, doesn't matter what scientific method you are using, would you agree, sir, that you are requiring the uniformity of nature in order to do that scientific method? The uniformity of nature is the fact that all of the physical world works under uniform, law-like patterns. We call these uniform law-like patterns natural laws, like laws of gravity, magnetism, thermodynamics, physics, and many, many more. In order for you to do any science whatsoever, these laws, this uniformity of nature, must be universal and it must be unchanging. So, where do these laws come from that are universal and unchanging?
But they're not unchanging. We've already proven that they're not unchanging.
I'm sorry, sir. Has the law of cause and effect ever changed?
It does all the time. As a
Have a
matter
nice
of
day, sir.
we demonstrated that effect can happen before cause.
I'm sorry, sir. When you leave reality and say that the law of cause and effect can change over time, you just left the real world and you're living in a fantasy world of your own making.
Quantum
See, this is the
mechanics doesn't
problem with
care
people
about
like
your
yourself, sir.
How
You see,
about
hang on a second. Hang on a
you
second.
going
Hang on
on
a
a
second, sir.
monologue for a
Hang on a
while
second, sir.
now?
Hang on a
So
second, sir.
about
Hang on a second.
how about you hang on a second?
Hang on a second, sir. Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and continue. So, once
You're
again, sir,
going on
this is the
a
problem.
monologue
Natural
and
laws. The definition of a
letting
natural
him
law
finish.
is a pattern observed in the physical world repeatedly and exclusively without contradiction, like laws of physics, like the law of cause and effect, like laws of logic, like laws of mathematics, like laws of gravity. As a matter of fact, we have 4 fundamental cosmological constants of our universe. These are the strong and weak nuclear force, and the force of gravity, and the force of magnetism. These things are so finely tuned to within 1 billionth of 1 degree of accuracy just to allow life and functionality in our universe. And if they ever changed, we would not be here to complain about it. Now, once you go ahead and make an arbitrary claim that laws can change, number one, you don't know what science is. And number two, you don't know what the definition of a natural law is. So you have some homework to do, sir, before you and I can have another conversation.
Mr. Batman, are you going to allow me to speak?
Next.
Okay, I'm going to ban you now. Thank you.
Is there anybody out there, Mr. S?
I warned him. I mean, if the guy doesn't want to talk about quantum mechanics, fuck him.
He was being very unreasonable, to be fair, and he claimed that you were talking over him and he let you finish, even though he was interrupting you.
I mean, I don't feel bad about this at all. I've been wanting to do that for a while. SD, you still there?
He might be going for a piss or something.
Oh well, people can unmute themselves now.
Did you ban this? Did you ban Batman?
Yes, I did.
I wasn't listening.
Well, he made a whole bunch of statements. I asked him, "Can I finish my statement?" And he said, "No, I'm not." Basically, said no. So I banned him. I said to remain polite,
Okay.
not be polite.
He agreed to the terms at the beginning, so I mean, I guess, right? Oh, vey.
There's a massive problem with what he stated. We already know that many aspects of the laws of physics have changed over time, and you can actually change those presuppositional aspects, like the strong and weak nuclear force. All you have to do is add energy, and then they start to change.
Yeah, of course. Like the gravity changes as well. So it's like these laws that we experience are just simply things we've inductively mapped, right? So
there are a couple of problems. The problems that came out from what he said. The first one was the standards of science are made without any justification. That's not true. They're made by justification of observation and data. The second problem he said, of course, was cause and effect are absolute. We know that's not the case. In fact, effect can happen before cause. Quantum mechanics happens. It's how our computers work. We utilize aspects of quantum mechanics in our machine and everything that's electronic. We know this to be true. And the fact that he thinks that the fundamental laws of the universe cannot change is also not true. We know this for a fact. There was, in fact, a time span in our own universe that we have measured where gravity worked in reverse. It's called the Great Expansionary Period.
Dude, did you just ban him?
yeah,
Oh, I banned the fuck out
Well,
of him.
I already know that you did, but
stabby.
I mean, I did warn you. He broke the rules that we established.
yeah, I mean,
You're breaking up pretty bad, SD.
okay. Can anybody else hear me, or is it my connection?
I can hear you now. It's just you cut out a second.
Okay, well, I've reversed the ban because I don't want him to get banned just yet. I mean, he can be banned later on or something, but sessions for him. So
See, if he's not going to let other people talk, which he overtly refused to do just now, why are we letting him in here aside from banning him later?
I was AFK, and funnily enough, a similar thing happened earlier on. It always seems to be when I got to take a leave that people get banned, so I miss all the fun stuff. But
He was
Now,
basically claiming that I'm respectful. I let you finish when you speak, but he cuts him off as soon as he begins to answer his question by arguing against his false premises.
when I said, "Can I please attempt to ask you questions about your statements?" he just said effectively no and demanded somebody else ask him questions. That violated the
Okay.
rules of the engagement.
all right, fair enough.
And-
If that's how it went down, then that's fair enough.
I mean, you can bring him back in. I'll just ban him again.
I mean, look, I know what he's like. Okay, I've spoken to him before. I've tried to have a civil discussion with him before, and you're right. The only reason that I humored it for the last few videos or something is because other people wanted to talk to him. I have no interest in talking to this asshole, which is why I've been mostly quiet. So yeah, fine, no problem.
Yeah. You'll notice that like a few of us don't talk to him Drew.
I'm aware.
Yeah, it's just a waste of fucking time.
I do get a certain pleasure in, beating the pinata, but I like to make people, fall into their own traps and break established rules on their own. Not like anyone gave me 30 pieces of silver.
No, he can. Well, I did revoke the ban, and that's going to show on the stream. But it's fine if you guys want to reinstate it. I didn't realize that. It's fine.
Yeah, you're cutting out pretty bad again, SD.
What is the matter with my fucking?